Sergeant Sarah Mitchell survived 2 deployments to Afghanistan without a scratch. It took one meeting in a quiet conference room to nearly break her. Because the man who fired her that day did not just cost her a job. He cost his entire company everything they had built. And by the next morning, there was almost nothing left. Sarah had been the operations manager at Dalton Federal Logistics for 6 years. She was not the loudest person in the building. She never asked for credit. But everyone who worked there knew the truth. Sarah was the reason the company ran at all. She managed the contracts. She managed the schedules. She managed the relationships with clients who trusted her because she never once broke a promise. Her co-workers respected her the way soldiers respect the one person in the unit who never panics under pressure. Because for 4 years before this job, panic was not an option for Sarah. She had served as a logistics sergeant, coordinating supply convoys through some of the most dangerous roads in the world. Coming home, she brought that same steady discipline into civilian life. Mr. Richard Dalton owned the company. He was a decent enough boss most days, but he had one soft spot that everyone quietly worried about. His nephew, Tyler. Tyler had never held a real job. He had failed out of 2 business ventures his uncle funded. But Richard could not say no to family. One Tuesday morning, Richard called Sarah into his office. He did not waste time. He told her that budget cuts meant restructuring. He told her that Tyler would be taking over her role, effective immediately. He told her he was sorry, but this was final. Sarah did not argue. She had faced worse than an unfair boss. She simply nodded, gathered her things, and walked out the door with more dignity than the moment deserved. What Richard did not know, what Richard had never bothered to ask, was that Sarah's position was not simply a job title. It was the anchor holding together the one thing keeping his company alive. Dalton Federal Logistics held a government contract worth millions, a contract specifically reserved for veteran-owned and veteran-staffed businesses. Sarah was not just an employee. She was the qualifying veteran whose service record and leadership certification satisfied the federal requirement. Without her, the contract's compliance status collapsed overnight. And Sarah was not the only veteran in that building. For other former service members worked there, men and women who had followed her lead, who trusted her judgment completely. When word spread that she had been pushed out to make room for an inexperienced relative, every single one of them handed in their resignation within hours. By Wednesday morning, Richard Dalton walked into an empty office. His compliance officer called first, informing him the federal contract was suspended pending an audit. His 2 largest clients called next, both citing the same reason. They had signed with Dalton Federal Logistics because of Sarah's reputation, not the company name on the door. Within that single week, 70% of his revenue evaporated. Richard called Sarah that same afternoon, his voice shaking in a way she had never heard before. He asked her to come back. He offered to double her salary. He offered her Tyler's exact position, restructured entirely around her. Sarah listened patiently. Then she said something that would follow Richard for the rest of his career. She told him that respect is not something you can buy back after you have already thrown it away. She told him that loyalty only works in one direction if it is not built on trust. And then she told him no. Instead, Sarah did something far more powerful. She partnered with the 4 veterans who had walked out beside her, and together they founded their own logistics firm. Within 3 months, they secured that same federal contract under their new company, this time with Sarah's name on the ownership papers instead of just her service record. Richard's company never recovered. It quietly folded within the year. Here is the lesson in all of this. When you build something on the backs of people you do not truly value, you are building on sand. Loyalty, competence, and quiet excellence often go unnoticed until the day they walk out the door. And when they do, everything that depended on them goes with it. Sarah never sought revenge. She simply stood up, walked forward, and let her integrity do what words never could. Sometimes the most powerful response to injustice is simply refusing to accept less than you deserve and building something better instead. If this story moved you, that is exactly what Soul Relief Stories is here for.